program for restorative justice. Can you explain what that means?
So I know we have the juvenile diversion programs, but we have nothing to mirror with the adults that we see in our system. And that's where I would start. We need an adult diversion program. People make mistakes. People need a helping hand. And right now, we just don't have that. All we do is throw the book at them. Ironically enough, not too long ago, I heard an NPR story about what happened in Columbine. And after Columbine, what the Denver County school districts did is any student that acted out, they were expelled and suspended. And the rate of students that went to college and graduated went down dramatically. In the past 2 years, Denver has been in the forefront of restorative justice in our school system. And the success stories are really kind of unbelievable. And the rate of graduation, the rate of students that are going to college. And, you know, I would need a definite helping hand in getting programs started. And that's where I would go. I would go to the success stories and see where they started and where they got their funding and what they did right, and try to learn and implement that in our community.
What would a program like that look like?
Well, I think with the adults, what we need more of right now is resources. For example, if we have a drug offender, I had a client with PTSD that used drugs to cope, essentially, and he eventually got a DUI and was going through the program, and his parents called me in a panic that he's using meth. What do we do? And honestly, unless you have the money to send them to a 30-day rehab, we have nothing for these people. And yeah, put them in jail, sober them up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then what? They come back out without tools. So what I would like to see is deferred prosecution, where you give people the tools, you teach them the lessons, you give them what they need to succeed. And if they do succeed, you dismiss those charges. But the point is to help them when they need the help. Restorative justice isn't just getting away with it. It's helping people succeed. And right now, we're helping people fail. And when you tell someone they're a criminal and they're no good, they start believing that. And we need to change that big time.
Okay, last one for Bruce Brown. I would be really remiss if I didn't ask you about the controversy surrounding your vacation days. So could you please explain to us your theory on that? And I had some notes on some of the other DAs around the state who were pretty clear in saying that they thought 6.5 weeks was too much. Dan Rubenstein at the 21st said he's too busy to have a substantial amount of time away from work. George Brockler from the 18th said he's taken 27 days off since 2013. In 2015, during the James Holmes trial, he only took 5 days off that whole entire year. So there seems to be a theory that, you know, while there isn't anything that's been written that says how many days you do get, there seems to be a consensus that this was a little bit excessive. Would you comment?
I'm happy to. So let's put this into context. So when there was that murder on April 10th, 2016, and I was at home on a Sunday night, and I got a call that said we have a likely homicide in Idaho Springs. I left my home, I came here, and I ended up working with law enforcement from 8 that night until 3 the following morning. So DA hours are not exactly what you might expect from other types of professions. We work all day long, 7 days a week. When I go on vacation, I really wish I would get a vacation. The reality is, I keep this device handy with me, and it keeps ringing over and over and over. One of the things we do in this judicial district is require that any search warrant or arrest warrant has to be cleared by the district attorney or a deputy before it's ever presented to a judge. Do you folks think that criminals work on the 8 to 5? Because they don't. And when I'm asleep at night at my home and I get a call and there's an officer on the other line, and we may work for 10 minutes and we may work for 3 hours in order to get the warrant processed. So this is the type of job. Now I have unique circumstances, okay? I live in Evergreen, and I'm a divorced dad, and I have a small child who's still, just started middle school. So my first priority, I'm sorry to say, is not to this job. My first priority is to my son. And because of my arrangement, I have to take vacations and time that may be different from those terrific prosecutors, like Dan Rubenstein, who just completed a 2-week trial. And the interesting thing, last year when they said I took the 6 weeks off, which I hope you understand now that's not time off, was the same year that I spent 2 weeks in trial on that homicide case in Clear Creek County. And I'll tell you something about being a trial lawyer. It's not a 9-to-5 job. I have tried over a dozen homicides to completion in my career. My guess, between the two of them, not one. Not one. So if we're going to have, and if we're going to deal with this crime wave, which is what it is on serious crime, who do you want to be the lead face on the prosecution? A guy who's been there over and over and over, or somebody who's coming into their first murder case? Thank you.
Great, okay, so I'm finished. Who wants a question? Who wants to ask a question? Hang on, can you?
It's okay, I can talk loud. So, no, I wanted to know, well, you said foreign national, so what does that mean? And then also, for Bruce Brown, I wanted to know, you said that there's an increase in, it was in the very beginning, you said there was an increase in, I don't know, certain kinds of cases. So I was wondering why you might think that is, like, certain people are coming into the county, and, you know, before it was just all us old folks. Well, it's still a lot of us old folks. But so I was wondering if you had any opinion on that, or there's some reason or whatever. And I was wondering what you meant by foreign national. I really didn't understand what your name was.
So my name is Sanam Murnia, and I am actually from Iran. I moved here in the 7th grade, and I know this sounds a little bit cliche.
From where?
But
Iran.
From Iran.
Oh.
And I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but it's honestly the truth. I think it was in the 8th grade where I started learning of the Constitution. And, you know, coming from Iran and seeing what I see, and I go back every year, outside of this year, of course, my family's there now, but I just thought the Constitution was the greatest thing ever. The 4th Amendment is my absolute favorite, and I just, you know, from that moment I knew what I was going to do with my life, and that was to protect the Constitution, and that's why I'm sitting here today. I never changed courses, I've never done anything, and you know, the one thing, the question wasn't really addressed to me, but I do want to touch on this crime wave that we're talking about. I hate when politics use the fear factor. And yes, we have homicides in this community, like any other community. But overcharging cases is why we have a higher rate of crime. And I will tell you firsthand, and I know there's other defense attorneys in here that are nodding their heads with me.
Thanks, Sally, for your question. So it is a problem, and I think it's a fair question to ask why. So I've got a couple different theories about why we're here. The first one would be we're more urban. We're an I-70 corridor, and the county, if you look at Summit, they're getting big box stores. Eagle near Gypsum has Costco. You know, so that's just a sign of what's happening. I think I'm in a pretty good position as a attorney who worked in the big city in Los Angeles for 15 years. Dealing with these types of cases, I think I'm in a good position to understand and how to deal with those problems. One problem I don't know how to deal with, but I think goes to a point that Sanam raised, mental health. We got a lot of people who are not well balanced and resort to violence instead of good, intact families where they have good models from 2 parents. Not to suggest that that's the only way to get it, but we don't have a lot of families that necessarily reflect some of those values that may teach them ways of conflict resolution. I think this is a good thing for me to look at and work on in my second term. I didn't get to it in the first term. I probably didn't understand it that well in the first term. But I think we have to do more than we have in order to channel mental health resources and not lock mentally challenged people up in a jail, which is unfortunately what we have to do all too often, because there isn't in these small resort communities a good facility for them to get treatment in.
So it isn't people coming in from, who are refugees or?
No, I mean, we have anecdotal cases of that, but there's nothing to suggest that our rising violent crime rates are attributable to non-citizens. Nothing like that.
Can I ask a question? Of Mr. Brown. You made mention of a couple of things that happened during your predecessor's tenure. And since I was present for those things, I'd like to ask you, first, what is your evidence or what is your backup for asserting that you currently have the most experienced prosecutors in the 5th Judicial District? I believe that Mr. Hurlbert was a 15-year attorney when he left and became the assistant DA in the 18th Judicial District, Arapahoe County. And Turner had a number of years, the Honorable Judge Romeo. I think that there were at least a few 10-year plus attorneys in that office, as well as myself, an experienced attorney. So I'd like you to back up your assertion there. I am also wondering this assertion that you made about the charitable contributions, that it really just it was a matter of a person handing someone a check to just take it somewhere. What is your evidence that that is actually how that was conducted throughout the 4 counties? Was that in Clear Creek only, or was that in 4 counties that prompted you to put a kiosk in your lobby?
No kiosk in the lobby. You actually talk to a person who can take your check or run your credit card. So the way the charitable contribution, they had different systems in all 4 counties. I didn't think that was right. So in Clear Creek County, where I practiced the most, you would go to the receptionist who would tear off this month's recipient, and you would be sending in a contribution to there. And it happened different across the 4 counties. I didn't think that was right. I thought it was inequitable, and it reflected the need for more oversight, more structures. So that's why I changed that. Fair question, and I want to tell you, you can be an experienced attorney, but a hack. So, I mean, experience isn't just going to get you good prosecutions. But what's the factual basis? I'll tell you it. This is my 30th year as an attorney, okay? I got licensed in 1986. Joe Kerwin, the attorney who's today started the prosecution on the double homicide, I think Joe's at 35. John Franks, who's in Summit County, 25. Brian Garrett, who's in Clear Creek County, 18. Lou Walker, who's in Eagle County, 30 years. Never in this district's history has there been staff as capable of as these men and women. So that's where I make that assertion. And I don't mean to denigrate your work or the work that Mark or Scott did before me. Some of it was excellent. I mean, Mark and Scott are professional prosecutors.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, as you, in those 30 years, were a professional defense attorney, and it was only when you took this job and when you were elected that you became a prosecutor.
It's true, and that goes back to the question that Kate posed before, which is how do you make the transition? And a lot of people were really skeptical when I took office. How's this guy, particularly the cops that I was going to work with? And the nice thing is that I've won them over, and they realize that when I get into the courtroom and there's a defendant sitting there and a victim sitting there, that I know my role. And I go to the mat just as hard, if not harder, than I did in my 26 years as a defense attorney, so that those victims, when they come out of court, whether they won or lost, feel that they got justice and they were well represented.
if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I would be the only one coming to the job with prior prosecution experience. And I am tired of seeing new rookie prosecutors that believe that the number of convictions is the mark of a job well done. For me, the cutting of recidivism, the reducing repeat offenses, is the most important thing I can do in most of our cases. A couple DAs ago, we had Mike Goodby. Mike Goodby said to Carrie Van Beek, the wife of our Eagle County Sheriff, Carrie, most of the people involved in the court system are good people who made a mistake. Treat them as such. And I intend to bring back that philosophy of justice.
Hi, I would like to ask Bruce Brown, I think it was last year, you took a case from Grand County and prosecuted it and so forth there. I'd like just to get the Reader's Digest version of that, and then I'd like to ask the other two, someone and Bruce, to just put their reflections on it, if that was an appropriate use and, you know, disposition of it, etc.
Yeah, so last year I was appointed as special prosecutor out of Grant County. The fifth is big enough for me, really. 4 counties is plenty. I don't want to add in a fifth. But the reason that I needed to be the special prosecutor was because a county commissioner there had allegedly submitted documentation for mileage reimbursement duplicate. So he was billing the county, and he was also billing these special districts, which were holding the meetings he was going to. So we investigated the case very thoroughly. We ended up having that commissioner convicted of a felony offense. Judge Ruck Riegel, who's the former chief judge in this district, came in and he sentenced the man to a small amount of time in jail. One of the conditions that I imposed in the plea bargaining process was that he could no longer hold public office and that he would have to resign.